My name is Kelly, and this is the story of my first miscarriage. My first miscarriage happened July 31st, 2018, and I was 6 weeks and 2 days far along when it happened. We had just got married in May of 2018, and this was actually my second marriage. I have a daughter from my first marriage, but myself and my husband, we really wanted a child of our own. And so as soon as we were married, we started trying. And we were very lucky, we were very fortunate that we didn't have to try for very long before we got pregnant in July. So I thought that everything was gonna be fine. I thought it was gonna be just like my first pregnancy with my daughter. And I didn't really have any trouble getting pregnant nor staying pregnant with her. So that's kind of what I expected. I didn't expect the ride that I got. We had our first OB appointment set for August 1st, and we were so excited to be able to see the baby on the ultrasound for the first time. We just couldn't wait. And the day before our appointment was on August 1st, and on July 31st, I woke up, and when I went to the bathroom, I had like a little tiny bit of pink blood discharge. At first, I wasn't too worried because I did have some bleeding with my one pregnancy before, and she turned out okay. So I wasn't too concerned, but I called the nurse anyways and checked in with her, and she said it was no big deal, that, you know, I don't know, maybe something like 30% of pregnancies have bleeding, and there's normally no problem with it, that it's a common thing in the first trimester. So I kind of went about my business, and I was trying my best to put it out of my mind and not worry about it. Then, maybe an hour after I first saw the blood, then I started feeling period cramps. And this did not feel right. Like, it didn't feel like the kind of feeling you get when you're pregnant. It felt very unpregnant. As the cramping went on and on, I started actually bleeding. So it went from being just like barely any kind of pink anything to being actual bleeding. And it just seemed to get worse and worse every time that I would go to the bathroom. So I called the nurse again and told her what was happening. And she told us to go into the office and to get checked out. So we drove straight to the doctor's office, and we were sent into the ultrasound waiting room to get an ultrasound done first before seeing the doctor. So we sat there in a waiting room with, I think it was almost exclusively pregnant people in the waiting room at that time. And they were all really, really pregnant, like much farther along than me. People that were about to give birth, basically. And sitting there, like, that is the part of this miscarriage that still, like, that haunts me the most, is just sitting there in that ultrasound room with all those pregnant people and hearing them talk. Like, some of them were complaining about not being able to sleep because their belly was so big, and how, like, just like complaints, just general complaints. And I don't blame them, because I do understand, you know, that it's not exactly comfortable to be big and pregnant. So I'm not blaming them, but at that moment, it was just really hard to hear, because all I wanted in the world was for this baby to be okay, and for me to be able to get to where they were in my pregnancy, for me to continue past this short little spot and to get to the end of my pregnancy. That's all I wanted. So I sat there in the waiting room. My husband was with me, and I just kept thinking to myself, please let everything be okay. I knew that there was a lot of blood that came out, and it didn't seem like it was going to be okay. The amount of blood didn't seem like the baby could possibly still be inside of me. And I had started to see clots, so I knew that wasn't a good sign. But I just kept hoping beyond hope that everything would be okay, and somehow it would just be some kind of weird thing and everything would be okay with the baby. That's what I just kept hoping. And it seemed like sitting there in that waiting room, hoping and praying and crossing fingers and toes and thinking all the good thoughts and doing everything I possibly could. It felt like that took, like, it just dragged on and on and on. It felt like we were in there for hours, and I know we weren't. When we finally went into the ultrasound room and the ultrasound technician started looking around my uterus, I immediately saw that there was nothing. There was no sac, no baby, no heartbeat, absolutely nothing. That's a really, I don't know, I mean, what I've learned going through as many as I have is that, like, they all suck. There's, you know, there's not one type of miscarriage or one type of loss that's easier to handle than the other. They all suck. But it is really hard when you never see anything, when you never even get an image in your mind of, like, you never have any particular thing to grieve over that you can imagine. That baby, for all the world's purposes, for everything the world knew, that baby never even existed. It only existed to me. I was the only one that knew that at some point that baby was alive. And I don't know, I think that makes it really hard. After they were done looking at my uterus that had nothing in it, then they didn't say anything. The ultrasound technician was completely silent the entire time. And when she was done, she told me that we could go back to the doctor. And when we went to the doctor's office area, we were immediately pulled back into the doctor's office, meaning her, like, office where she has her desk where she sits down. So it was not an exam room where you would normally go if you were having a pregnancy visit, a normal OB visit. So, I mean, you know, I knew at the moment that there was nothing in my uterus, but then it's just like, it's just another nail in the coffin that, yeah, this is no longer a pregnancy. So we went into her office and we sat down and waited for her. And when she came in, she was very compassionate. I was lucky. And she told me how sorry she was. And she told me that it was not my fault. And she told me that this was very common. Lots of women go through this. And most of the time, the vast majority of women go on to have another pregnancy and a healthy baby after that. She told me that just because I had one didn't mean that it was going to happen to me again necessarily. Didn't increase my odds, I guess, of it happening more than once. And I understand all of that. I mean, like, all of that is true, that it does happen very often, that the majority of women only have one and then they go on to have another healthy pregnancy. The majority. And all of that is true in the statistical sense, in the mathematical sense. But I ended up being one of those unlucky people that was going to have more than just this one. And it was not going to be easy for me to have a healthy pregnancy. But I didn't know that at the time. At the time, we went home after seeing the doctor and her telling us this. And she told us to wait 1 month before trying again. Like, wait to get one full cycle and then we could try again. So we went home and that was our plan. And I definitely cried and I grieved and I was sad. But the thing about my first miscarriage that I think was different than my others is that I had a whole lot of hope after the first one. Like, even though I was sad, I was really sad, but I had hope that it's okay, we're gonna do this again and it'll be fine. I wouldn't say that I was over the loss. It's not like I immediately was like, okay, I'm over it and moved on. I was still sad and it still stuck with me, but I was okay to be like, well, we can still go forward because there is hope and we can try again. For me, after the first miscarriage, I used the gym as my healing place. After I knew that I wasn't pregnant and I knew that it was fine for me to work out however hard I wanted to, I really went hard at the gym and I was like just trying to make all these goals for myself. Like, I was gonna try to do pull-ups and I was gonna increase my squat weight and I was gonna, I don't know, I wanted a goal, I wanted to do something, and I went to the gym and that helped me. For that first miscarriage, the gym really helped me get over it. I was able to channel, I guess, my grief into exercise, and it was very helpful. So I would suggest that as one possible way to try to cope with grief after a miscarriage. That's one of the ones that I tried, and for the first one, it definitely worked. It didn't solely carry me through all of them. I had to add other things to my repertoire as it went along, but it was a really good one to start out with and a really good one for the first miscarriage. So that was my first miscarriage experience. but unfortunately it wasn't my last one. Thanks for watching and listening to my story. I know for myself that it really helps to talk about my miscarriage stories. So if you've had a miscarriage, I would honestly love to hear your story. So if you could put your story down in the comments, then I think that it would help everybody. I think it really helps to talk about your story, and I love to hear other stories because it helps with perspective, in my opinion. So thank you so much for watching, and I wish you luck on your journey, wherever it may take you.